Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome guest mentor Wayne Richard from Bean Ninjas to the pod. Welcome, Wayne.
Welcome. Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
It's awesome to have you along for the ride today. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you do and how you help merchants to do better, and be more productive and be more successful and more profitable, you've been doing this, you've been running Bean Ninjas for almost 7 years now, so it's certainly not your first rodeo. But it feels like you come from that finance background. You come from that hardcore, you're a Zero certified advisor when you were at HP Enterprise, finance manager, been a project controller, financial analyst. So it feels like, sure, you've got these entrepreneurial tendencies, which is why you run businesses, but you very much come at what you do through this financial lens that brings a financial rigor and a framework to helping your clients be more financially successful. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. I think when it boils down to it, the scorecard that financial reports provide, right? It's any fitness routine. How do you know if you're hitting your goals? You step on the scale, you get a number, you can gauge yourself, you can baseline, you can understand your progress over time. Financial reporting is the same scorecard for business. It's simply the resultant numbers of the story we've been creating within our brands.
And you have, it feels like you've also gone one step further beyond these traditional financial services like tax services, et cetera. And in terms of not just being a sort of generalist tax advisor or providing, say, year-end financial accounting services or monthly tax services, or whatever it might be, you really niched down into the e-commerce space to where your focus is 7 and 8 figure e-commerce brands that are ready to scale or already on the road to scaling. And therefore, you've got a good working knowledge of some of the systems that these brands use, the likes of the Shopifys, the WooCommerce, the BigCommerce, and a pretty good understanding of the channel mix that most of these brands are working with. Marketplaces like Amazon, they're an omni-channel business. Maybe they got physical retail, plus online, plus marketplace. So it feels like you have said, okay, I'm going to niche down. I'm going to target my knowledge and my experience at these brands that oftentimes, let's be honest, sure, they might be meeting their tax obligations through a plugin, Avalara or something like that. So they're charging the right tax, they're collecting the right tax, maybe even they're remitting the right tax. So they're staying within the IRS's good graces so that they don't get audited. But there's so much more to it than that in terms of running a financially sound business that has financially sound unit economics. And that feels like an area that these brands oftentimes don't fully understand.
Yeah, it's been interesting, the journey, right? Initially starting out in Bean Ninjas, our niche was quite broad. We came out of the gate supporting online businesses, and very fortunate to our startup story. In late 2019, I met with my business partner in Australia, and we were talking about how we could continue to scale the business along the goals that we had set for our future. And in getting there, we had identified a powerful focus on niching down, really getting clear around the pain points and problems that we could address for a certain industry segment. And e-commerce wasn't the only idea we had. What we did was we looked across all of our customers and we did a financial analysis. Of course, being accountants, we looked at the numbers, said, who do we make healthy margins with? And a lot of that means who values the contributions that we're making in our quest to solve their problems, the ability for us to save them time, to bring expertise, to invest the time in deeper research and understanding how a dollar sales actually makes it to a deposit in your bank account, how we can then understand how we can use that dollar in your bank account to continue to fuel growth through marketing efforts, product development, procurement, to generate a margin and a livable wage for that merchant at the end of each month. So when we looked across our portfolio, we did the financial analysis, and there was really two major focus groups we were looking at. And that was e-commerce. And also there was a trend where we were seeing for travel bloggers, which is quite a particular niche. But then we also matched the financial analysis with where's their opportunity. And we started to see toward the end of 2019, the chatter around Amazon and Shopify's growth and being a true competitor, and folks, of course, having had amazing success in eBay. And in interviewing these clients, we identified really where our value was within their understanding. And we felt that with both the understanding of the financial analysis to the enjoyment that we experienced in working with these e-commerce entrepreneurs, that was going to be our bet. And then as the story goes, 2020, there's a massive boom in e-commerce, which really just helped strengthen the need for merchants to look toward professional bookkeeping and accounting service providers like B-Ninjas to address these needs, because they were uncovering challenges that they had never experienced, growth at scale that they were not accustomed to, had planned for, and were starting to really feel some of those challenges with stockouts and cash flow implications of trying to buy more than they've ever sold before, and looking for ways in which they can mindfully do that through an understanding of their unit economics to determine, is what I'm selling truly profitable at scale, or am I simply scaling further losses? And that just allowed for us to then create the flywheel. When you do good work for your customers, talk to other potential customers. And then two, it provide us an opportunity to get involved and invested in those communities where e-commerce entrepreneurs were searching insights. So we got involved in a number of notable e-com communities. We invested and volunteered our time to be CFO in residence to communities to address questions and forums that were being posted. And I think by giving and continuing to share the playbook we were learning at that time allowed for those earlier stage brands to identify and utilize those key workflows and tools that we were suggesting until the point where they understood the value proposition. At some point, as an e-commerce entrepreneur, your time is more valuable against those tasks that best mirror your strengths. And oftentimes for these sellers, it's not e-commerce accounting. So it put us in that position to address a problem. We did so in a way that was adding tremendous value and helping grow alongside them in their brands. And we also had the capability to scale up our teams where the support was needed. So it's been an amazing journey now, having spent 3+ years exclusively serving e-commerce brands. But beyond that, having had now experience, not just with Amazon customers, but omni-channel customers, also getting more involved in retail and wholesale and some even physical retail. So it's just been a great journey. We really enjoy our customers, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Absolutely love that story. It's a scenario of, I guess, finding product market fit over a period of time based on experience and success, not just success for your business, but obviously the success that you've helped to bring to your clients, and looking across that customer base and effectively doing almost like what you would do in a lot of these D2C, B2C brands, is segment your customer base and say, okay, who are we able to get great results for? Is there a playbook associated with this that we can almost productize and bring to the market in a scalable way that we can take on some clients and almost guarantee good results for them on the backside of that? Obviously, there's certain things that are outside your control, of course. There's the macroeconomic situation and individual business circumstances, but you can almost guarantee, there's a greater likelihood that you're able to help these businesses move the needle when you figured out, okay, this is a cohort that we've seen great success with before. We can productize this. We can create a plan around this that we can roll out at scale for more than one brand, more than a handful of brands. So I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, when we think about some of these brands that, for me, when I look at my ICP, it's brands that are doing sort of a minimum of $5 to $10 million a year, annual GMV, because otherwise they really don't have the internal resources or capability to actually roll out the types of recommendations that I'd be giving them through my consulting services. And I'm guessing that there's probably a level of GMV for you that is also a good fit for you, where, like you said, you identify, say, for example, in forums and obviously through my content, the goal that I have with my free content is for the clients that I can't work with, that I can't help because they're not quite at the scale yet where my services would be useful to them. And therefore, I'm not going to ask them to pay me for something that they can't use. I then send them back to my free content and I say, look, this is how you can get educated. This is how you can start to do things that you can implement yourself on a small scale. And then when you're popcorn that pops and you get to this certain scale, you're probably going to get to a size where A, it doesn't make sense for you to own this piece anymore. And B, you'll actually have the resources to implement the pieces that I'm really good at and that will help you take it to the next level again. So that growth level from 5 or 10 million to 100 million, you're going to need expertise in your business to help make that happen. And that's where I'm a great fit. So it probably feels like you would take a similar approach. You'd say, okay, you need to be at a certain GMV level before we can help you move the needle. But we're in these other forums, we're in these other spaces, and we're going to help answer questions as best we can at no cost to you until you get to the scale. So at what scale do you see you being able to move the needle massively in a business?
I think you made some amazing points. I think one other that I would add is it's critical that business owners understand the efforts that they're outsourcing. And the best way to do that is to do it yourself first. What you begin to understand and really appreciate is the value that the agencies will be providing that are delivering then that service, or the gaps that you're unable to uncover in doing it on your own. So to answer your question, for us, it really starts getting into the high 6 figures, entering 7 figures, where the order and volume of magnitude to these e-com merchants becomes unattainable based on the time they have available to really dedicate to the effort, but also the magnitude of the issues that can be created with having unorganized or inaccurate financial reports may lead them down the road to make poor decisions, but also put them in a position where they're paying unnecessarily more tax than they really need to. So the best approach that we have, and it's very similar, we've started from day one sharing content. And as we're identifying solutions to help meet some of the needs from our delivery team, publishing content on our website to help inform customers and potential customers of what these tasks and workflows look like. And from that, it's just been an opportunity for them to utilize those guides, implement some of the tools that we're sharing. We partner with many third-party applications alongside QuickBooks Online and Xero as an accounting platform that are specifically built to address the needs of e-commerce businesses. And within that, we're so open in our sharing because we do believe it's critical that our customers first have an understanding of the effort that we're behind the scenes taking care of for them, because then the value in the ask when there is, of course, it's a financial transaction as well, right? We ask and charge a subscription fee for a certain delivery of service. And where that relationship really gets strengthened is when our value is appreciated, because the efforts that we're delivering are not something behind the veil. And it's just all of a sudden on the 5th to 10th of the month, you're getting financial statements. There's a lot of effort that goes in to digging into all the sales channels, following all the orders to settlement, to deposit into your bank account, working through in your balance sheet, all the various clearing accounts for PayPal, Shopify, TikTok, whatever the sales channel and payment gateways might look like. What we've done and where we're different is we truly track every dollar sale to a deposit in your bank account. And a lot of that effort takes a bit of time and research. But what it allows for you to do is uncover and really ensure that those sales are generating cash within your business. We had an amazing story toward the end of last year where we had a merchant, they opened a new sales channel on Amazon and they failed to load their banking details. So Amazon was just continually accruing these proceeds from sales. And we uncovered that we're seeing these sales, but we're not seeing the deposits posting from these settlements to your bank account you may want to look into your setup. And when they looked at the setup, they were able to load their banking details, and there was a $50,000 deposit that they were unaware of. Imagine that at a magnitude then of 10, what that might look like. And they're so busy day to day. They were looking to launch new products. They were exploring new sales channels. They were really just trying to extend their reach, that loading banking information wasn't something they were going to invest a ton of time into researching. So it was just one great way in which you can see the value there in a very tangible manner.
And what are maybe the top 2 or 3 issues when you go into these businesses? And I'm guessing they're getting into the medium size. They're still small in many respects. On certain scales, they would be considered a small business, but they're edging into the medium size of the SMB space. They're getting into the more M side of the business, and they're starting to scale and grow and get traction. What are some commonalities that you're seeing when you go into these brands? Is it the fact that they don't even know what the term unit economics means? Is it the fact that they don't know what the term contribution margin means? Is it that because as we saw during COVID, when TAMs exploded, the total addressable market exploded, everybody was worried about growth. It's how can we grow quickly? We don't care whether that's profitable growth. We don't care because funding was cheap and easy. We can go out to the market. We can either maybe get some PE funding. We can get some VC funding. We can get angel funding. We can get friends and family to give us some money because we're growing so fast. So we're not even really thinking too much about profitability. We're thinking about how can we acquire as many customers as we possibly can at scale. And then we'll think about profitability later. That's what I saw a lot of during COVID. And then, of course, when the TAM dropped off a cliff, when every physical retail started opening back up and we got back to normalcy, all these brands went, holy shit, we are a totally unsustainable business in our current model. And so they're starting to now think about things that they never even had to consider before. So what is it? What are the top maybe 2 or 3 problems in how these businesses are run when you go in and talk to them that you just see over and over again?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, your financials are a scorecard of your operational efficiencies or inefficiencies, right? I'll touch on the first ones really around the way in which their reports are organized. I think a common mistake is at that size and scale, there's been someone that's implemented a cloud-based accounting system, be it QuickBooks Online, Xero, NetSuite, whatever the tool may be, but they've used the default chart of accounts. The default chart of accounts does not allow you the clarity and visibility into those particular margins or groupings of expenses that you can begin to understand and view over time to know which levers to pull in your business to really support scale or increase profitability. What we suggest is asking friends, getting ideas of what does a profit and loss statement look like that is particular to an e-commerce brand. And for us, we tried to group the major areas of expense. Of course, you have your sales, but within sales, you want to understand your true gross sales against the discounts, against the refunds, to get to your net sales number. And then from there, once you understand your net sales, you want to begin to understand, let me take it further. You can then begin to understand what is the percentage discount that I've been providing over time? What impact does it have if I reduce that percentage discount, if I increase my minimum threshold for free shipping? You can begin to understand how those factors play into the overall financial performance. And then we get into the major areas of spend. So then what are your cost of sales? So this is both your product cost and the expenses necessary to get product landed at your customer's doorstep. Then with that understanding, you can calculate a margin. So what is the net sales minus my cost of sales? Then that provides me my gross profit margin. Beneath that, we begin to understand your customer acquisition cost. How much am I spending on customer acquisition, marketing efforts, influencer efforts, or whatever the case may be? From that, we can also deduct another key margin, your contribution margin. What's the fuel I have available after I've spent on product, advertising it, and getting it to my customers' doorsteps that I can invest in my wages, my team cost, and also general operating expenses? So those would be the last 2 categories. But what those groupings also allow for you to do is sometimes it's hard to compare one number from a smaller brand that you may be operating to a much larger brand. But when you start to look at things in percentages, it levels the playing field. If I'm spending as a percentage 50% of my product, you're probably not going to have a very viable business, right? But if I can push that and work through at scale, getting that percentage cost much lower, you begin to understand more clearly where the gaps are, where the major levers are that you can pull to address whatever inefficiencies you're seeing in your business. So that's one of the common areas. I'll just touch upon really two others. From a true accounting perspective, that visibility is more clear when you're running your financials under an accrual-based view, particularly for inventory. And what that simply means, there's two instances and methods of accounting. The first is a cash basis. The cash basis says I've made an order to my supplier. I sent a 30% deposit. I've recognized that as cost of goods sold on my profit and loss statement. And then in a few more months, when the goods perhaps hit US soil, then I'm paying another 70%. A few months later, that's recorded as cost of goods sold. But you cannot sell those items in many instances, unless you're doing pre-sales or something else, until you've actually loaded them onto your shop, into your sales channel, and someone's come across the ad and clicked to buy. So the timing of when the recognition of the sales dollars and the expense from those products is always misaligned. Under accrual-based accounting, what we're able to do is match those so that the timing of recognition for products are aligned with the timing of when those sales occurred. The method that we use is then there's another document I haven't touched on, and that's your balance sheet. And the third issue we see is sellers ignore their balance sheet. It's surprising to me when I ask first, what's the value of inventory on your balance sheet? And a seller says, I don't put inventory on my balance sheet. That's your largest asset. But also, in recognizing it before you've really sold it, it does not provide you the clarity and visibility into your true financial performance. So those are just three key areas in common errors that we're seeing in that mid-tier.
Wow, that's such great advice. And I think you're right. So many businesses that either, oftentimes they're founder-led businesses, and they might be fantastic at marketing. They might be fantastic at brand building. They might be fantastic at social, but very rarely are they also really good at the financial parts of their business. Rarely they go, okay, I need to buy some more stock. Do I have enough money in the bank account to buy more stock? Great, let's go out and buy some more stock. They don't necessarily do fantastic demand planning. They don't necessarily do fantastic, when it comes to demand planning, they tend not to bring into it supplier performance in terms of the turnaround times, delivery times, how much stock on hand the supplier actually even has at the time. There's a whole lot of things that go hand in hand with the operational performance of a business that are of a financial nature, right? So we've got ops and we've got finance, and in many businesses, never the twain shall meet, but you cannot separate those two. They are intrinsically linked, right? So in procurement, if there's no money in the bank account, procurement can't place an order on a supplier, right? And so being able to forecast the likely sales over a period of time down to its individual SKU level, taking into account seasonal demand, et cetera, over time, being able to plan things. I think as far as I can tell, businesses run on a surprise and response basis when they're small. They get surprised by something, and then they react, right? So it's a very reactive way of running the business. Oh shit, we don't have enough money in the account to make a purchase of more product. Quick, let's slap a 10% discount on the website. Let's move a whole bunch of existing stock so that we can do cash turnover and we can get some cash back into the business to grow to the next level. And so it's very much a week to week, day to day, month to month reactive process that they go through, as opposed to having a strategic approach to the way that they grow their business in a sustainable way. And it feels like you are you're helping to remove the veil from their strategic planning, helping them understand the financial impacts of the decisions that they're making so that they can build a more sustainable, viable business model.
So I would love to say we have a client base that is super that planning and proactive strategic business planning. And I'll be honest, you touched upon my background. I spent my life for 16 years in future focused financials, right? With HP. Everything was about the 3-year plan. What resources are we going to need? How many individuals are we going to need to hire? And we lived in this cycle of working for almost 3 months to building that plan before fourth quarter, having that plan signed off on. And then at the beginning of the year, the comparative analysis to performance against the plan that became a score to the VPs that we were supporting, but also the ability for us to reforecast and over time learn about those assumptions that we continually got more and more wrong so that we could tighten them up so that next year our forecast was more right and we can make better decisions, bigger bets on some of the strategic goals that were being performed within our organization. I thought initially my premise in leaving corporate and starting as an entrepreneur was to bring the best-in-class processes of a world's top finance organization to small business. And the challenge I discovered is many of them failed to even understand the history that was being determined within their business. So just getting to the place of having and utilizing these timely, accurate financial statements was a gap that I couldn't jump over. The need for accurate financial data as an input helps best inform these forecast models. I think those brands that are most successful certainly have methods for forecasting and building out the projection models. What's been interesting too is in just the last few years, you saw the rise of these working capital lenders and very easy ways to access working capital. But one of the issues that these opportunities brought were many sellers were just ignorant to the true cost of financing. They didn't have the tools available, and the marketing was so sophisticated that, from the landing page, it looked like you were getting very attractive terms. But when you began plugging them into calculators to truly understand what you're paying to borrow these funds, particularly in such a dire need that they had, oftentimes it became pretty ill-informed opportunity. So I think we're getting to a place now that margins are very much in vogue and a hot topic. People are more mindful now of their financial performance and ways in which they can be a bit more proactive in driving those changes through this understanding and use of their numbers.
And I think the zero interest rate policy from 2008 to 2021 exacerbated that problem, right? It meant that the cost of capital was, I don't want to say it's free, but for the biggest players in the world, it was close to free. And even for the small guys, it was pretty darn low. The interest rates were pretty darn low for a pretty darn long period of time. And now all of a sudden, cost of capital isn't free anymore. Here in Mexico, it's now 11.25%, right? That's the central bank interest rate, right? That's a pretty high interest rate. They're trying to get inflation under control. In the United States, it's, I think, 5.25%. The Fed has said higher for longer. They're going to continue to raise rates to rein in inflation. They're saying now that these rates are going to stay where they are till at least the end of 2024. So brands are now all of a sudden getting a short, sharp shock in terms of this cost of capital isn't zero. It never was zero, although that was abstracted away from them behind this veil of supposedly cheap, effectively bridging finance is effectively what it was. And brands like Shopify have aided in that with Shopify Capital and them having access to your sales numbers and everything else and making working capital super cheap and relatively cheap and easy to access. I think it has caused brands to assume that A, the capital will always be there, B, that it'll always be relatively cheap, and that they can use that capital to infinitely scale. And regardless of for example, their margins. And I think that this is, that reality is coming home to roost pretty quickly. That is no longer the case. It was really never the case, but in particular now, it is definitely not the case. And some of these brands, they never had a sustainable business to begin with. And so they're all of a sudden having to get religion. How do we get sustainable? Whether that's we raise prices, whether that's we cut costs, is that a combination of the two? Is it new channels that we have to go into that have natively better margins in them? is it reducing our marketing spend, but trying to do things in a smarter, more creative way instead of just turning on the tap of Meta and Google? Maybe we have to rethink what that looks like for us as a brand. And so I think that for these brands going through the pain, it doesn't feel very nice, but they're getting a reality check. And I think ultimately the brands that can make it through this to the other side, they're going to be much, much stronger brands in 1, 2, 3 years. If they can live through this, they will be so much better. They'll just be a better run business at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think I love the idea. Every single business at some point will be exited. And there's just the natural cycle of life, right? Like at some point you will exit your business. And what's critical is that you begin to understand what is the value that I'm creating within this business over time. And of course, all of our goal is to create a larger asset for the time we're investing in our business within that time we're spending. For some, it's very real. The goal for many entrepreneurs is I want to get in, I want to build a business to a level in a certain place where I can understand that value makes sense for me to exit, or the timing makes sense for me to exit. And all of these conversation points that we've made so far just put you in a position to better add to that asset value, right? A business that's more defensible in its financials is a business that will receive a higher exit multiple at sale, but also the organization and the processes that you're working through to have a keen understanding into the opportunities where the business may be able to scale, but you haven't been able to invest the time, are very attractive to potential buyers that may have those particular skill sets. So I think there's no loss in building the habits to create greater financial acumen or deeper insights into your numbers. What I do appreciate about e-commerce operators is many of our customers and those individuals that have had the most success do more than just review their monthly financials. It's funny, I've begun to understand like our submission of the financials is really validation to what they've believed has been happening within their business throughout the entire month. Now there's amazing tools where nearly just using Shopify dashboards, you can see every day your volume of sales, your net sales. You can use the reports to understand, after loading in your landed costs, some of your margins. At least from a product level, you can have a great sanity check on a daily basis into how your business is performing. With a lot of the marketing tools, there's opportunities there to see the effectiveness and the performance of and efficiency of your advertising spend. So what's been great is oftentimes for those operators that are more involved in understanding from a daily or weekly basis their numbers, the length of time we need to spend to review their financials in a monthly confidence review is quite small, right? It's, hey, did you notice this? I was seeing this month. Yep, we see it in the numbers directionally. Looks like your increased spend in whatever channel is truly equating to increased sales. Keep it up. So that's been something that I've been keenly aware of. Is I think over time as tools develop, there is an opportunity for us to really be that sounding board. But more often than not, it's really just that opportunity to have that conversation, to be held accountable, right, to someone other than your own hunches and thought processes.
And how often, or do you recommend that brands, particularly if they're still too small perhaps to engage with you, if they're maybe not quite there yet, how often do you recommend that, say, a Shopify brand that's only selling online, they don't have physical retail, so there's not that complexity, so they're a pure play online brand, maybe they're selling on multiple digital channels, but they're pure play digital business. How often do you recommend that they implement something like an app like Klar, Rockerbox, something like Shop Hero? There's probably 5 or 6 major apps in the marketplace, in the Shopify marketplace, that start to help brands understand their costs, help them understand their margins, help them understand their gross revenue versus their net revenue, help them to start understanding at least the fundamental building block basics of the data that's coming out of their Shopify store and any channels that might be connected to that, like Amazon, because sometimes those Amazon orders will come down into Shopify for fulfillment. And do you recommend that brands go down this path? Is it your mentality that, hey, any tool that gives you more insights than what you have today into your financial performance and helps you understand that more is probably a good thing, even if you can't employ us?
I think and it could be more than just a software tool, right? I think when is the right time when an Excel spreadsheet or napkin math gets too complex at scale, right? A lot of what these tools do is they provide the ability for the fast calculations because of the scale and order volumes and complexities that come about. But at the end of the day, inventory is nothing more than volume times a cost, right? So how do I understand then unit economics? Once we understand what our sales price is, there's if for a long period of time, you can utilize a simple Excel spreadsheet. We have some guides and toolkits free and available for download on our website that can help in providing this type of insight. I think where those tools become important is when you start adding in the complexity of multiple sales channels and you're looking across differing ways in which you're maybe warehousing your products or you're across. In particular, I would say the best business case is when you begin to get very in your SKUs. I think it's very easy if you're selling a handful of products. It's easy in a Google Sheet to have 5 columns and understand what your margin is across each of the products, or if it's, one product and many variants where the landed cost remains the same. But once you start adding the complexity of multiple products, different suppliers, then tools, many that you've mentioned, and then also some of the inventory planning tools become very much worth the price tag. And then too, anything that provides you that confidence. It's like a workout strategy, right? Like the best workout plan is the one you actually use. So assess those. That's one of the first kind of low-hanging fruit tasks that we suggest too is, hey, every now and then review the subscriptions you're paying for and determine, is this something I need to have, I like to have, or I don't need it all? And then scrap those that you're not using. I guess the long answer to your question is when you truly see the value for the price you're going to have to pay. And that's really individual to every seller.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that really what you're saying is that these tools have helped perhaps democratize access to this type of information in ways that was much harder before. That if I'm not for example, if I'm not an Excel guru and I don't know how to pull my data out of, for example, if I don't know how to download my data out of Meta, my spend data out of Meta, if I don't know how to download my spend data out of Google, if I don't know where to put that into my spreadsheet and where to put the macros in and if I don't know the fundamental building blocks of how to build these formulas out so that I can actually understand what the data is saying to me, then it feels like these tools effectively are putting a super user-friendly interface effectively on a spreadsheet where they dynamically connect to all these systems. They pull in the data automatically. They do the calculations automatically, and then they present it back to you in a more actionable way, because you don't have to be a financial genius. If they're telling you this product you're losing money on every single sale, it's probably worth looking into that and either raising your prices, trying to look for an alternate supplier, trying to get more efficient in the sale of that product, or maybe getting cheaper shipping on that product. Or maybe it comes down to, okay, for that item, now when I ship it out, my shipping rules around that product, because maybe it's a large volumetrically sized item, maybe I need to charge more for shipping on that item because I'm losing my ass on shipping. I guess anything that gives you visibility into inputs that are leading to a negative output, I think that's got to be a good thing.
Spot on. And I love it. I think you've mentioned twice now too, raising your prices. It's been always interesting to me, the fear that sellers have around that strategy. And it's one that from a math perspective, it looks very appealing to me, right? If every dollar price increase is $1 more margin, $1 more profit that you're going to see if you can maintain your cost to the same level. It's an interesting fact there. I often feel like in the conversations, people just feel like a price I established pretty arbitrarily or alongside my competitors is now set in stone. And it really doesn't have to be. I think What's also interesting are the tools that can help quantify for you what might the reduction of order volume look like at certain increases in pricing. And once you can get okay with those numbers, or just allow yourself the ability to run small tests. Say, what does the impact look like if we try it out? Let's give it a go.
Let's try it for 30 days and let's see if it has the impact we think it's going to have. And also, I think that raising prices, it starts to make you look at what other value do I bring to the table other than price? I think this is something that every single business needs to ask itself, and it needs to ask that question honestly, and it needs to answer it honestly. Because if your unique differentiator is just price, you are now in a race to the bottom, and that is not sustainable. So the reality is, if you are not bringing any other value to the table other than price, you probably shouldn't be in business. That's the reality. And you should be adding some differentiating factors to your business as soon as freaking possible. If you want to be able to justify raising your prices, you better figure out a way to bring more value than everybody else in the market to the table in a unique way. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be around very long anyway.
Absolutely.
Listen, Wayne, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your input. You clearly know your stuff. You've been doing this for a very long time. Businesses at all stages of growth, but obviously once they start to get into that mid-market, they start to really justify having a true financial expert as a guide, as a mentor, as a coach sitting alongside them. And there's a certain amount of knowledge transfer that automatically goes along with that. There's a certain amount of financial acumen that you can help translate for these merchants to get smarter about how they think about their numbers. And I think that's really important too. So I really appreciate you sharing from your deep pool of experience. If people want to get a hold of you, find out more about what you do and how you do it, are they best to just go to your website? I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's beanninjas.com. I guess that's a really nice play on words. Instead of bean counter, you're bean ninjas instead, because accountants are oftentimes called bean counters. And Wayne Richard, you're on LinkedIn as well. How do you like people to reach out to you and have a conversation?
I think you've nailed it spot on. Reach out LinkedIn if there are particular questions that I can address for you. If you're interested in either some free toolkits on how to manage your business financials, to address some of the tools we mentioned today, those toolkits are available on our website. And as you mentioned, link will be shared in the show notes.
Absolutely love it. Now we're at the time of our conversation where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So Wayne Richard from Bean Ninjas, what is your question for me today?
I'll leave it toward more of the accounting realm. So a preference for accounting software. Let's say, are you a fan of QuickBooks Online or Xero?
Hardcore Xero fan. You use Xero in my own business, love Xero, think it's a fantastic product. The size of clients that I work with, they almost always have an ERP. They don't just have a financial package. They don't just have an accounting system. My favorite ERP is NetSuite by far, hands down, no questions asked. I've implemented NetSuite before as a merchant and just love the platform. Think it's amazing in most instances, and I think it's pretty accessibly priced too. So yeah, those are my two favorite platforms. Pure accounting package, I'd say I'm a big Xero fan. From an ERP package, love NetSuite, but have worked with just about every ERP and accounting package under the sun at some point or another with my clients. So yeah, I think that there are fans of each. I think like you, the one caveat I would put to this is whatever platform is that you're going to use, and you're going to use the bulk of its functionality and get the most value out of using that. Technology is just a tool at the end of the day, and they're all raising their prices. They're all doing this all the time. They're all adding features, whatever the case may be. If you can't use a tool because either it's not user-friendly enough or it doesn't have the core features that you would tend to use in your business every day, then you probably should look for something else. So I'm just a big fan of making sure that whatever tool you deploy, it's a great fit for your business and you're actually going to use it and leverage it. It's the 80-20 rule. Are you going to use it for at least 80% of your requirements? If not, then maybe you should find something else or something even more lightweight. Sometimes it doesn't mean moving up the stack. Maybe it means moving down the stack. If you're using, you can have a Ferrari, but if you can't drive it, you can't afford to insure it. You can't afford to put petrol in it. It's just going to sit in the garage. It's just, what fun is that?
So I love the idea too. I've heard a story where someone shared with me what your clients are looking to buy is really the hole in the wall, right? They're not looking to buy the drill, the hammer, the individual that makes it happen. And I think much to your point, think what we're trying to do and share is an ability to build and have confidence in the accuracy of your financial data. And there are many tools that can provide that. So using one that you can easily operate in that doesn't cost your company, the bank, is certainly the best approach and the best one to use.
Couldn't agree more. Wayne, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being a guest mentor today. I think this was going to be a really popular episode with my audience, so can't wait to speak to you again soon. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.